Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Diane Duva, as Carrie introduced, and also with me today is Ryan Ensling of the Office of Energy Demand and Nancy Didditz of the Office of Energy Demand. And we're really pleased to share with you the progress and results of the work to improve energy management at state buildings and facilities. We look forward to your questions, and please submit them to Carrie as she noted at the beginning. Just for some context, let me explain that the state statutes, there are several state statutes related to energy management at state facilities. And the majority of those authorities require and invest in the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection the responsibility for improving energy management at state facilities in collaboration with other state agencies. For today, we just want to highlight some of the progress from 2017. We've achieved some notable milestones in our ability to analyze energy consumption and spending for all state agencies, and we're working to make that information available both to the public and to the individual state agencies. And Nancy and Ryan of our office have actually worked one-on-one with many state agencies to enable those agencies to actually see how much energy they use from all different commodity types and how to track the trends associated with energy consumption. We also have purchased electricity supply on behalf of all executive branch agencies, as well as the office, as well as legislative management and judicial branches, and some quasi-public agencies as well. We also have made some progress on a very large energy management project on a campus at the Connecticut Valley Hospital, and we will update you on bond funding for efficiency upgrades. There's many state facilities. Lots of folks may wonder where they're located, and of course they're located throughout the state with some centralized areas. But this is an important thing to know, because when we talk about saving energy, we're talking about saving energy all across the state. There's 70 million square feet of state structures. Most of those structures are owned. There's over 3,800 structures. This does include a number of smaller buildings and structures that are not large. We also break it down by buildings over a certain size as well. We also do have some buildings that are leased, almost 3 million square feet. What's important to know about this government sector, meaning federal, state, and municipal, is that the building footprint in the commercial and industrial energy consumption sector is pretty large, that it's between 11 and 15%, depending if you're talking about electricity or natural gas. The actual consumption and use of energy by this sector is a good chunk of the overall energy consumption in the state. Part of the reason why it's super important. Some of the advantages of having centralized energy planning in a state energy office, as we have here in Connecticut. The state energy office is in the Bureau of Energy and Technology Policy at the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. It previously was with the Office of Policy and Management. And all the states throughout the country have state energy offices, and some of them, like Connecticut, are housed in their environmental protection agencies. So we find that there are many advantages of having centralized energy planning on behalf of all state agencies. And there's a number of state statutes, as I mentioned earlier, that compel DEEP to improve energy management. The reason why it's important to plan is we want to be able to track our progress toward achieving environmental goals and energy management goals related to energy consumption. And for that reason, we've put together a platform that allows us to look on an agency basis and on a building basis how much energy is being used. We're looking at analyzing energy trends over time and with seasons, and based on groupings of different buildings. We have an example that we can have an agency look at all of their facilities across the state, and look on a building by building basis, a campus basis, or an agency basis. the total amount of energy accounts by, the total amount of energy when you break it down by commodity means you have to look at the number of accounts. So we have over 3,800 electricity accounts and over 1,000 natural gas accounts across all state facilities. We also have delivered fuels, water, and we also have electricity provided by municipal electricity cooperatives. So when you look at it in full, we have over 611 million kilowatt hours that we're consuming on a statewide basis. We're looking to improve the data quality of this information by getting better information from the delivered fuels. We don't have all of that electronically available at this point, so we're making estimates about the amount for the fuels, but we have a pretty accurate understanding of how much electricity and natural gas is being consumed on a statewide basis. When we break it down by the different branches of government, the executive branch is the first section of this chart on your screen, with over or close to 38 million being spent on energy for the executive branch on an annual basis. And for the judicial and legislative branches, you can see they have a far smaller number of buildings, but they are still a significant amount of energy consumption. About half of the state's energy consumption is actually through the universities, the University of Connecticut and the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities, including the community colleges. And that's the category called higher education. The real estate, when you break it down in this way, just to look at it in a slightly different view, and our computer system doesn't accept percentages when you look at it, but we have that available. The largest users of electricity, as I mentioned, are the University of Connecticut and the Connecticut State Colleges and University. And then when you add in the technical high school system, it means about half of the state's facilities are part of the education system. Our annual energy spending, when you look at it from that point of view, is when you take out the University of Connecticut and the state colleges and university, the largest bills are through facilities from the Department of Correction, the Department of Transportation. And these facilities, of course, Department of Correction is a 24/7 operation. Department of Transportation has many facilities across the state. When you look at the average annual energy cost per square foot, or the average energy cost per square foot in state buildings, it's $3.93. And as I mentioned earlier, we have over 3,800 buildings, but there are 243 that are more than 10,000 square feet. So these are the bulk of the larger buildings that our attention is mostly focused on. It's interesting to note, and this is not 100% complete data, but just as we move towards having more complete data, you can see that the bulk of the spending is on electricity, although the bulk of consumption is actually on natural gas. So this is still work in progress data. We're still gathering information from delivered fuels across many different state agencies. But fundamentally, at this time, based on the information available to date, we're at a point where electricity costs are about 80% of energy costs, and natural gas usage is about half of the energy use statewide for state agencies. Here's some examples of buildings that have high energy costs. And what's interesting, of course, is that there's such a variety of different types of buildings. You can see on this chart, this is sorted by the annualized cost, but there's also a column for square feet. So some of the costs don't necessarily correlate with their square footage. You can say you see aircraft hangars, for example, using a lot of energy, but not necessarily being as large as the correctional facility. That's the second on the list there for the Department of Correction. The Armory buildings are large users. The largest energy user for the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection is a fish hatchery facility, which is essentially a water treatment plant, if you think of it that way. And so it's a variety of different buildings. There's power plants, there's gymnasiums, there's prisons, there's office buildings, there's residential barracks. There's a whole variety of different buildings in the portfolio of state buildings, and each of them have different needs and different priorities for making energy investments. Another way to look at this set of data is on a graph. Again, the power plants are the largest users of energy, not surprisingly, and prisons and courthouses are big players in energy consumption. Here's an example of how power plants tend to come up first when you sort by cost per square foot, and then correctional gymnasium, campus buildings for community colleges are some of the larger users as well as a very large office building in Hartford. At this point, we've benchmarked about 27 million square feet at 276 state buildings. Benchmarking is an important way to help prioritize what buildings can be worked on in terms of energy management upgrades. We have conducted this benchmarking using the US EPA Portfolio Manager, which many of our municipalities are using as well. And recent upgrades to the Portfolio Manager allow it to understand certain types of facilities, such as wastewater treatment facilities, and is a constantly improving system. Our electronic data flow that we're getting from our utilities flows both to Portfolio Manager these days, as well as to the energy analytical platform that we've put in place to work with our state buildings. And now we just want to recap some work that was accomplished in 2017, specifically related to upgrades going on around the state. The small-scale projects that we've been undertaking through a utility-administered program that's a turnkey program has been a very successful way in the last few years for us to get very good results. We're seeing quick turnarounds in savings. All of these have paybacks of less than 4 or 5 years. And it's been a very helpful way to get some of the simpler types of upgrades accomplished at a variety of different buildings. And this is just a breakdown about which agencies have participated in these. And this is possible through a master agreement that we have in place with the utilities and our Department of Administrative Services. In terms of the funding for many of the energy upgrades at state buildings, we've been working with bond funding over the course of the last few years. This is based on bond authorizations that the department or OPM has received since 2007, and they add up to about $88 million over the course of this decade. And by January of 2017, actually all of that funding had been allocated and expended. So we had no new funds to work with in 2017 whatsoever, as all of the bond funding was completely expended as of January 2017. So we did not have any new funds available for mid-sized projects in 2017, but for the ones that were already underway with funding that had been allocated to them, we were able to move towards completion on additional projects. And the payback is a very good payback for these larger scale projects with about a 6-year payback. When you total up projects over the course of the last few years from those mid-sized projects, there are 44 projects that we now have 1 year's worth of data. So when we took a look at that 1 year's worth of data to see what type of savings we were seeing, we see that the costs in before of over 16 million have been reduced to almost 14 million. That's the chart on the left. And the BTU savings is significant for those buildings with commensurate reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Just to provide an example to give you a feel for the different types of buildings or building upgrades that are going on, here's an example from the Robinson Correctional Center in Enfield. And that was simply an important HVAC upgrade. Heating, venting, air conditioning is very important in prison centers. And one of these facilities had very outdated rooftop units, and those were replaced. That upgrade is saved over 3,000 MMBTUs, and we are seeing over $143,000 in savings annually from the savings in operating costs, avoided operating costs. Another example of a large-scale project is at the campus of the Connecticut Valley Hospital in Middletown. We have a website that you can click on that shows the details of the different jobs and greenhouse gases, gas reduction achievements, as well as the project savings as the project goes towards completion. We anticipate about a third reduction in energy use through all of the different upgrades occurring campus-wide. And this is an example of some of the information we've made available on that website, so that you can break down the estimated energy savings and the greenhouse gas emission reductions as well. One of the things that we have done through authorities for Department of Administrative Services with help from DEEP is to competitively purchase our electricity supply for all state agencies. And so we've done that on behalf of all branches of state government. And through a competitive request for proposals process we completed in 2017, we achieved a price well below the standard offer pricing, and that has saving the state a significant amount of money. We've ended up extending that contract for state fiscal year 19, so we'll continue to see savings achieved by having pricing below the standard offer. The percent of Class 1 renewables is 16.31% when you look at it over 17 and 18 for fiscal year. Another thing we've been working on through our Office of Energy Demand is focusing on the workforce needs for the clean energy industry, specifically the energy efficiency industry. And in 2017, in cooperation with the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, we conducted a survey of workforce needs. This was funded by a grant from the U.S. Department of Energy. We got a variety of information from a variety of different sectors in energy efficiency and other clean energy and other energy aspects of the workforce. And the bottom line result was, and it's in our report, which is available on our website, the bottom line answer is that there is still a continuing need to train up people in technical skills and in, especially in the HVAC industry. One of the ways to close that gap in training is through the Energy Management Associate's degree that is now available at Tunxis Community College. This is a program that was designed to ensure that we have well-trained technicians and professionals prepared to serve the clean energy future here in Connecticut. And this year, actually, Tunxis Community College graduated, I think yesterday, their first class of associate's degree candidates. They also have stackable certificates that people is much independent industry, industry professionals who advise on workforce development say the certificates are very important. So this associate's degree program includes stackable certificates in and out of the career at different points in their career journey are able to acquire the skills and training that the industry. Looking ahead, 2017, with the passage of the state budget at the end of October, there was authorization for $20 million for DEEP to do energy efficiency upgrades in state buildings. The likely to be are working towards installation of upgrades for a portion of that funding. And we were authorized an additional $20 million. This fiscal year 18 and for fiscal year 19. And in fiscal year 19, we hope to get those funds released so that they can be allocated to projects. Additionally, in collaboration with the Connecticut Green Bank, as well as the Department of Administrative Services, the Attorney General's Office, and other executive branch agencies, we have made some progress on getting some standardized documents in place that will allow us to see increased installation of renewable energy at different state facilities. We are working to ensure that that can be done cost effectively, and hope to actually see in 2018 additional installations. Meanwhile, the formerly known Board of Regents, now known as Connecticut State Colleges and Universities, have been installing solar PV systems at various locations in their portfolio, such as Manchester Community College and at Middlesex Community College and at Southern Connecticut State University. Overall, the state plan for better state buildings that the department is charged with implementing is just recapped here. We are working on all of these elements concurrently. We're continuing to ensure we've got good data available for all of the state buildings. That requires cooperation from state agencies to ensure that we can identify their inventory of buildings and that the information for energy consumption is correlated with those individual buildings. But while we work on that, we're concurrently also continuing forward to benchmark buildings to find ways to procure services for energy efficiency given different funding constraints. We are constantly screening for potential opportunities. We've conducted some feasibility analyses for renewables across some of our buildings, and various energy audits occur in different ways. For example, through utility administered programs, small scale audits are conducted for smaller scale projects, and we have investment grade audits that have occurred on a couple of larger projects. At the end of the day, our goal is to make sure that efficiency measures and renewable energy generation opportunities are financed, which is our largest actual challenge, as well as installed and remain effective into the future. If you have questions, my email and my phone number are posted here. And Ryan Ensling, who helped put together the statistics in this presentation, can be reached at our Lead by Example email. And we look forward to any questions you have.
Great, thank you, Diane. We have had a few questions come in, and others, if you have questions, please go ahead and submit them. One question, higher ed spending was less, higher ed spending less using more energy? I think there was a slide on that. Does this mean that their buildings are more efficient? There was a slide, I think, let's see the slide number, showing, maybe that one. Their spend was less and their energy consumption was more.
Right. Partly, part of all of the data here is based on the best information available, which may or may not be complete, but that is part of the reason why we're gathering up this data, is so we can analyze those trends. So that's right, their usage is greater while their spending is not too much more. So the question simply is, do we have all of the information available for all of the agencies? We are frequently missing data for fuel oil, but we're working to plug those data gaps. And the variety of buildings that are used in the different agencies does have an effect on the type of buildings.
Great. Okay, next question. Are the average per square foot costs for different types of state buildings based on EPA database of buildings of similar use?
Well, actually, the average per square foot that we included in our presentation are actually based on actual consumption. So that's unique to the buildings and the usage. So that's not an estimate based on the EPA database, although, of course, for benchmarking buildings, that that would be used.
Great.
And so the automatic population of the Energy Star portfolio manager. So municipal and state accounts can request Eversource or United Illuminating. They can request, once they have a portfolio manager account set up for a building, they can request that the information from their account be sent electronically to portfolio manager. So but that does require you to initiate that request through the utilities.
So that's actually another follow-up question. So how does the state automatically populate Energy Star's portfolio manager with utility data beyond Eversource?
So the only automated population is from Eversource and United Illuminating. So fuel oils, water, municipal electric cooperative data, all has to be done by hand. It's the only, and I think it's an enormous step forward, the only automatic population is through Eversource and United Illuminating for their electricity and their natural gas accounts.
Is there any anticipation of those becoming automated?
For fuel oil? No. I don't know that the fuel oil, you know, we could probably work with a couple of large vendors. We've talked about that for our state buildings to see if they have automatic, or to see if they have electronic capacity, but our expectation is that, or our focus is on electric and natural gas. And I don't anticipate fuel oil and water data to be able to flow to portfolio manager in the near future.
Another question, do the energy efficiency funding sweeps affect the progress of the Lead by Example program?
Yes, absolutely. The diversions of 40% of the funding for implementation of the Conservation and Load Management Plan has affected all sectors across the state, all commercial, industrial, institutional, and residential sectors. It has a double whammy in terms of effect on the state because the opportunity cost associated with not upgrading our state buildings and reducing our operating costs simply means we're not moving towards a more sustainable way of managing our buildings. Very specifically, it affects the funding for the turnkey program that the state has been able to make so much progress with because of the lack of requirement for capital in the Small Business Energy Advantage program. But particularly in some regions of the state has been rationed in their participation in that program because of a lack of capital. The Connecticut Green Bank and the utilities are working hard to increase the amount of capital available to everyone who participates in some of these turnkey utility administered programs, and that should unlock some additional opportunity for the state.
Great. Another question, is there an annual written report with the info you presented today?
Yes, there's annual reports are posted on our website from 2012 through 2016, and the report for 2017 is in review and should be posted in the coming weeks.
And does that include a written report to the legislature?
That is the report to the legislature and will be submitted to the legislature in the coming weeks.
Great. If folks have any other questions, go ahead and submit them. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up. I'll give one more minute for folks to send in any questions they might have.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question of my own, Diane. What are you excited about in the coming year for this program? What are the anticipated milestones that you are excited about moving forward on?
Well, the really great news is our capacity for being able to understand our buildings better has grown exponentially in the course of the last year as we've been able to put this information together on a web-based platform that is available to state agencies. And we're looking forward to the continued cooperation of agencies as they see the value of being able to track their consumption and take control over their energy costs. And they're increasing participation in the training that we're providing in how to use our data platform so that individual agencies can plan for just the simplest of operational changes that they can make to save energy, as well as energy efficiency upgrades when they have capital funding to do that. We're also very optimistic that we'll get released from the bond commission, an additional $20 million for state fiscal year 19 that begins July 1. So we will be working to get onto the bond commission agenda and get that authorization released as soon as possible so that we can continue to work with the queue of buildings that have requested efficiency upgrades. And we'll hope to see that investment pay off as quickly as possible. So we're very optimistic that we'll be seeing some good progress in the near future on some mid-scale projects. We continue to look forward to the challenge of solving the funding dilemma for large-scale capital investments. We do not have a sustainable financing path forward on that, so we are looking forward to thinking innovatively about ways to cooperate with the utilities, to cooperate with other agencies, to work with the Connecticut Green Bank to find some financing solutions in the future for some larger scale projects, because the opportunities are enormous and the infrastructure of our state buildings is very important.
It looks like we had one last question come in, which was just more expanding on the nature of the upgrades that are installed.
Oh, sure. The most common things are heating, ventilation, and air conditioning upgrades. And of course, that gives us the best greenhouse gas emission reductions on an overall basis. So that's probably the most common type of upgrades, although we also see quite a bit of lighting conversion to LED. That's been very important to achieve some quick operational cost reductions. But some of those deeper and large-scale investments in HVAC, steam trap replacements have been very popular, saving a lot of natural gas in some of the buildings and across campuses. And of course, the boilers. We have many boilers throughout the state fleet that are dating from the 1920s and 30s. And so when those get replaced, we see enormous benefits, both environmentally and financially. So those are some important ones. And we see a question. Yes, we absolutely intend to get public access to the data platform. There is a way for us to do that. So we're working with the IT folks to get public access to that database available. So we'll post that on our Lead by Example webpage. And what we do have to caution is that there's a lot of incomplete data. Not every agency has been able yet to identify which electricity and natural gas and fuel oil accounts match up with which buildings. So some of the agencies don't have complete data yet, but as soon as possible, we'll put that data up on our webpage. And in the interim, of course, we're happy to answer anyone's questions about consumption and can, to the best of the data's availability, share that information.
Great. Thank you, Diane and Ryan. I really appreciate you participating today, and it looks like we're out of questions. If you do think of a question that you want answered, as Diane suggested, contact her or Ryan. Their email addresses are on the screen for you right now, and feel free to follow up anytime. So that concludes our webinar today. We are always looking for new ideas on webinars and topics that you're interested in hearing about, so please feel free to email me directly or the climate email address and to let me know what your ideas are, and hopefully we will have them up in front of you in the next time we do a webinar. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks.